My name is Jelena and I'm coming from Serbia. And my background is architecture, and I also have World Heritage Studies as my master's. And as you can see from the name of my research that is called Reading Nantucket's Landscapes, I got to spend the summer on Nantucket. Lydia, you can go to the next one. So let's look closer where is Nantucket. So Nantucket is the island located on the east coast on the Atlantic Ocean, and it's important to say that it was created by the last ice age when the glacier was melting, the sea level rise, and it pushed the island far away. I mean, it separated it from the mainland. We can go to the next one. So the narrative of the island, like the current existing narrative, is built around whales and whaling history, which was at a peak in 1820, and after the Great Fire of Nantucket in 1847, the whaling started slowly declining, and the tourism and actually the Nantucket baskets, like ship basket, that used to have a purpose back in the whaling days, is now reappropriated and it has a different new meaning, and it's actually an object of luxury. And Nantucket nowadays is a place where really rich people go to have their vacations, to be honest. Yeah, not to put it in nice words. You can go to the next one. So when I got there, my job, my role, was actually to expand the heritage narrative of the island. And I worked with the Preservation Institute of Nantucket, which is part of the University of Florida. So you can go to the next one. So I decided to do it by looking at the landscapes, and the question is, you can go to the next one. The question is why? I mean, it was such a big open variety of the topics that I could choose. You can go to the next one. But it's because of three things. I kind of separated them on the presentation in three different scales. So when I found out that I was selected to be part of the exchange program, the ECOMAS program, I was taught through my master's that the US has a really important part when the convention was created, that they were the ones who represented the idea that natural environment and in general, nature is important and should be part of the convention. So that was the first reason that drew me in the landscape direction. You can go to the next one. So on the second scale, the scale of the Nantucket case, nearly 45% of Nantucket landscapes is already protected, which was indicating to me, oh, it's important to look at the landscapes. And the last one is my own personal scale, and it's I'm as a heritage future professional, I'm really interested in bringing this holistic approach towards heritage, so kind of putting people, nature, and culture at once. And even though I believe in this, I still also kind of need to practice to really see it in that way. So it was also kind of a practice for my own self to start really believing and practicing this idea. So you can go to the next one. So, and let's take a look at the meaning of the landscape. So what's the meaning? So, I mean, when I started my research, I needed to define the landscape because I needed to have some theoretical background of it. And if you look at the Oxford Dictionary, everything you can see when you look across a large area of land, especially in the country, is defined as a landscape. And you can go to the next one. And the problem arises with the word everything, because landscape can be so many different things. It can mean so many different things. So you can go to the next one. And then I took out this amazing quote by Jackson that says, "Why it is a wonder that we have trouble agreeing in the meaning of the landscape. The world is so simple enough, and it refers to something which we think we understand, and yet for each of us it seems to mean something different." And you go to the next one. So what is my approach in this variety of meanings? You can go to the next one. Is that my approach in my research was every landscape is a code, and its study may be undertaken as deciphering of meaning, and that's why I call it reading. So you can go to the next one. So, and what was the focus of my reading? The focus of my reading was actually to trace back the changes to the native landscape, and by the native landscape, I mean by the time, so the landscape of Nantucket was firstly, there were no people, of course, so that's what I mean by native, and then there were Untitled people, which are actually the indigenous people of the island, and then in 1625, the first settlers came, the first Englishmen came to the island. So we can go to the next one. So my focus of reading the landscape was actually this interaction between the landscape and the humans. You can go to the next one, which is actually a cultural landscape, but you can go to the next one. And according to the operational guidelines, the cultural landscape are cultural properties representing the combined work of nature and of man. And throughout my research, I found out that actually every landscape on the island of Nantucket is a cultural landscape. So maybe even the word cultural landscape is a bit overused, in my opinion, nowadays, because I think that to this point of our existence on the planet, everything is basically cultural landscape because we touched every part of the planet Earth mostly. So to answer, throughout my research, I was able to detect 4 different topics. Landscape as a human habitat, which is the first emerging landscape. And it's actually, this, as you can see here, this is, I have to read, I'm sorry, I forgot the word, sand plain grasslands. And they're actually important because there is only 2,000 acres on the entire globe, and 600 acres are located on Nantucket. So it is really a disappearing habitat. And it was actually created, again, by humans' interaction. So firstly, Onepreneur came, they started growing corn, and then the English came and they brought sheep to the landscape, so, and also started cutting the native forest. So by cleaning the land, also they were using the burning methods of cleaning the land. So this is how they were created. And nowadays they're again managed only by human interaction. So because there are no more sheep, actually they're mowing the place to keep it as it is and to embrace the grass. So the other story is a landscape as wealth, and you can see here the last surviving cranberry bog on the island, and it's a milestone cranberry bog that used to be also the biggest cranberry bog on the entire world. And through the perspective of landscape as a wealth, I was telling the story of once the whaling was declaimed, the whole island needed to find a new purpose to keep people to stay. So what they did, they embraced again the farming, and one of this farming was actually the cranberry bogs, which I decided to represent the whole story of landscape as a wealth through a cranberry bog, because I think it's really specific for the New England, but also for the island. And it has a lot of meaning even for the local community. If you go to the next one. And then the landscape as an aesthetic is something that started taking place at the peak of whaling, because the whaling brought a lot of money, and instead, like in the same time bringing money, it also brought the idea of having these nice gardens that are now again living wildly through the landscape of Nantucket due to tourism and due to this really rich people owning the houses. But this landscape as aesthetic also reflects the landscape as a problem, which takes us to a current situation of the landscape of Nantucket. But it also, throughout my research, I started with the first problems, and the first problem actually appeared as an interaction between the Onepreneur and the English settlers, and it was actually by just understanding the selling the land. To the Onepreneur indigenous community, selling the land, I mean, they didn't understand it as selling, like you sell it and then you can't use it anymore, because to them, the land belongs to everybody and can be used by everyone. So when the English actually bought the landscape from them, to Onepreneur, it meant just like using the land for a certain amount of time, but not like they will lose completely the rights. So it starts by that, and it tackles the nowadays problems, reflecting especially on the water quality, as well as a lot of pesticides that are used. And they're at the end going again to the harbor and to the water. And you can go to the next one.
Oh, sorry.
So you can go to the next one. So I had a really heavy time finding out what is the takeout of all my research, and I again divided it into 3 scales. So the first scale is that this is a case study that shows the interconnection and strong bonds between people, nature, and culture as like a bigger scale. And then on a scale on Nantucket, it's a recommendation to the island itself that they have to have organizations both from working on the side of environment and culture, working and collaborating together in order to really protect what is valuable there. And on my own scale, I got into something that I didn't know much about. I went to this all environmental approaches and all about the habitats and different varieties of plants, so I really did learn quite a lot. Yeah, so
Awesome.
that's all.
Thank you.